Julius willingly chose to become the father of a set of sextuplets that people despised. After a decade, the most unexpected truth about them came out. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. On the drive back to his home, Julius looked into his rearview mirror. 4 of the girls were seated in the back of his pickup truck, while 2 sat in the front with him. The 4 girls in the back weren't talking, and neither were the ones in the front. The car was eerily silent, as if they were heading to a funeral instead of their new home. Their expressions weren't joyful, they were numb and neutral, the kind of expression someone wears after facing too many disappointments and no longer bothering to hope. Julius had just come from the orphanage, where he signed all the paperwork and became the legal guardian of the sextuplets. They were his adopted daughters now, and he considered himself their father, without the word adoptive. Julius was the kind of man who was either all in or nothing at all. He had accepted these girls as his own, and had no intention of ever going back on that decision. The sextuplets had been in the orphanage for 5 years. According to the caretakers, they were orphaned at the age of 4 and had lived in multiple orphanages since then. Their tragic story is what compelled Julius to adopt them. To others, it seemed like an impulsive decision, but Julius felt certain that it was the right one. The sextuplets were now 9 years old. At 9 years old, they had all been born on the same day. Julius had found this incredible. They were the first set of sextuplets he had ever met, and he was sure they'd probably be the only ones. None of the girls looked exactly alike, but they all bore a strong resemblance to one another, and they were all incredibly beautiful, even at their tender ages. Julius had found it odd that they hadn't been adopted before, but that was before the caretakers shared the girls' tragic story with him. The girls had been moved around to different orphanages. The first orphanage that had taken them in had housed them for a year and a half. That length of time had been the longest they had stayed in any orphanage. During their stay in that first orphanage, the girls had been scared and displayed signs of PTSD. They had to undergo child therapy for a few months before they started talking, playing freely, and relating to other children. Shortly after, many couples had shown interest in adopting the girls, but none of them had been ready to adopt all 6 together. Instead, they had wanted to adopt 1 or 2. The caretakers had understood that 6 girls would be difficult for anyone to take in, and had counted it a blessing that the girls would be adopted at all. They had thought that perhaps by the time 4 couples adopted a girl or 2, all the girls would eventually find homes. But the girls had refused to be separated. They had wailed, cried, refused to eat, and made a fuss whenever one of their sisters received an offer for adoption. This had happened numerous times, and the caretakers had become frustrated. The caretakers decided to try another method. They approached couples who wanted children and suggested they test living with the girls for some time to see if they could adopt all 6 of them. In the first family that the girls lived with, the wife began to hate the girls after a few weeks because she claimed they stole her husband's affection from her. For this reason, the girls were sent back to the orphanage. The orphanage eventually transferred them to another one. The second orphanage also sent the girls to live with another couple. For a few weeks, everything went smoothly. But then the wife got pregnant with a long-awaited child. By the 2nd month of her pregnancy, she had fallen ill, and the husband blamed the girls for her illness. He claimed that the girls were witches who wanted to harm his wife and unborn child so that they would be the only children in the family. The girls were sent back to the orphanage, and eventually they were transferred to a 3rd orphanage. Like the first 2 orphanages, the 3rd sent the girls to live with another couple. This couple was religious, and the people in their community held them in high esteem. No one expected any issues to arise from this arrangement, but big issues surfaced when the couple lost some valuable jewelry and money they had been keeping for others. Instead of owning up to their mistake, they accused the girls of stealing and severely beat them as punishment. The girls were 7.5 years old when this happened. They came together and secretly hatched a plan to run away. They were successful and went to the police. The police brought the couple in for questioning, and their investigations led to other unpleasant discoveries. The woman had been having an affair while the man was involved in gambling. Overnight, the couple's reputation was destroyed, and the community unfairly blamed the sextuplets. Hatred for the girls had grown so strong that they were transferred to an orphanage out of state. This was their 4th orphanage. A few months after arriving at the 4th orphanage, it closed down and they were transferred to a 5th one. Different issues kept arising at various orphanages until they arrived at the 9th orphanage, where Julius found them. By this point, everyone had grown so fed up with the girls that they wanted to wash their hands of them. The director of the orphanage told the girls that they still had a chance to be adopted, but only if they were willing to be separated. The girls were devastated, looking at one another with fear in their eyes. They had done everything they could to stay together, but it wasn't working, and they would have to say their goodbyes. It was in that desperate moment that Julius walked into their orphanage. Julius was a florist that the director had hired for his services. Major sponsors of the orphanage were expected to visit in a few days, and the director wanted the grounds to be colorful and attractive with flowers. Julius overheard the director telling the girls that they had come to the end of the road and would have to go their separate ways. The girls' reaction haunted Julius. He was moved with deep compassion for them. Knocking on the director's door, he entered the office and told him that he had a large home where all the girls were welcome to live. Julius was a black man, and the girls were white. But he wasn't daunted by this. He was ready and willing to take responsibility for them. The orphanage management was relieved when Julius confirmed he truly wanted to take the girls in. For the sake of records, they asked him a few questions to confirm his eligibility as their guardian. Julius was a widower who lived with his mother, who was in her 50s. Both of them earned a reasonable income that could support the entire family, including the girls. Regardless, the orphanage had arranged to pay a monthly sum to Julius for looking after the girls. He had refused it. He had told the management that he wasn't taking the girls to live with him for a test run. He was taking them into his home to be his daughters, and he would be their father. He wanted to fully adopt them. Everybody had looked at him like he was crazy. Didn't he know that these girls were hated? But they had let him adopt them. A few weeks later, the adoption proceedings had been completed. At Julius's house, his mom, Mildred, was excited to meet the girls. She loved children, and Julius had already told her the girls' story. She felt their pain. They had been through so much, and they were only 9 years old. She wanted them to feel at home and wanted to bring them comfort. In her eyes, the sextuplets were her long-lost grandchildren who had finally come home. She was determined to help raise them well. Mildred had another reason why she was so happy about the adoption of the girls. Julius had been lonely for 5 years, ever since his wife passed away in childbirth with their baby. He hadn't dated anyone or tried to make another family. He had simply lived with his mother in his 5-bedroom duplex located on the outskirts of the city. He grew the flowers he supplied for business on that land and had a small garden too. From the day the girls arrived at the house, Julius provided all their basic needs and any additional needs that his mom told him they had. But for weeks, the girls stayed withdrawn and quiet. They said thank you at the right times and only spoke when spoken to. No more, no less. The girls acted this way because they were cautious. They had lived with many people in the past who had initially been nice to them but eventually turned hostile. Neither Julius nor Mildred liked how formal and uncomfortable the girls were, but they didn't know what to do to change it. They continued to treat the girls well, corrected them kindly when necessary, and asked them about the things they liked. Though they were fed up with the girls' monotonous answers, they didn't give up on them, and one day it paid off. One of the girls, Dew, was dusting the sitting room when she accidentally broke a family heirloom that Mildred was so protective of. Dew was so scared she wanted to run away. She believed that Mildred would beat her up and throw her and her sisters out because of it. But Mildred entered the sitting room, saw the broken heirloom, and rushed to Dew's side. "Did you hurt yourself? Are you bleeding anywhere? Do you want to see the doctor?" Mildred fired the questions in rapid succession, her eyes roaming over every corner of Dew to make sure she wasn't hurt. Dew was surprised that Mildred didn't want to punish her and was genuinely interested in her well-being. She burst into tears, and Mildred wrapped her in a warm hug, comforting her. After that incident, the girls saw that Julius and his mom were truly good people who cared about them. In the months that followed, the girls opened up to them and started behaving like a real family. While some of the girls helped Mildred with the house chores and in the kitchen, the others learned how to grow flowers and garden from Julius. They helped him take care of the flowers, and as a result, he was able to grow more flowers and expand his garden. The best part was that the girls genuinely enjoyed partaking in those activities. They didn't do it reluctantly, they were so joyful whenever they were doing anything, and it warmed the hearts of Julius and Mildred. One time, Mildred organized a bake sale for fun. She and some of the girls baked so many different things that sold out in a short time, and there were many people asking for more. They made so much money that they considered starting a baking business. Also, more clients contacted Julius for his florist services, and he was able to fill all the orders because there were more flowers. He started making more money as a result and often surprised the girls with thoughtful gifts. 2 years after the girls started living with him, Julius asked them if they wanted to do anything special, and they all said they would like to go on a camping trip. Julius hired a van and made the necessary arrangements for a one-night camping trip. He wanted to keep it short in case they didn't like the experience and wanted to return home faster. However, he and his mom got a huge surprise on the trip. At the campfire, the girls sang a song together. Each of them had a distinct voice that blended perfectly and harmonized effortlessly. The jaws of Julius and Mildred nearly dropped to the ground. They had no idea the girls had this talent, As soon as they returned from the camping trip, Mildred went to the choir leader at her church and begged her to train the girls to sing better. The moment the choir leader heard the sextuplets sing, she was sold on the idea. The girls were excited to have a professional guide them and help them improve their singing skills. They loved to sing together, but until then, they had been too shy to do it in front of Julius and Mildred. They started training 4 times a week with the choir leader. This went on for an entire year before the choir leader began signing them up to sing at local events and festivities. The girls continued to practice and constantly improved. They could perform many styles very well and regularly performed for Julius and Mildred. A few years later, when the girls were 19, a talent hunt competition came up. At this point, the girls had completed high school. 3 of them wanted to go to college, while the other 3 wanted to pursue business and other interests. The prize money for the talent hunt competition was huge and would support all of them in their endeavors. For this reason, they decided to sign up for it. It would also be the last time they expected to sing together for a long time. The girls poured their hearts and souls into preparing for the competition. They decided to perform in an a cappella style, practicing long and hard to perfect each part. When they finally performed, it was an instant success. Both the judges and the audience gave them a standing ovation, and video clips of their performance went viral. They won the competition and quickly became social media sensations. Soon after, a major record label approached the girls with a lucrative record deal. The girls, however, replied that they would consider it before making a decision. A few days later, while they were still mulling over the offer, an unexpected visitor arrived at their doorstep. The woman who appeared was beautiful, elegant, and sophisticated. Julius answered the door, assuming she was there to present yet another offer. Over the past few days, the girls had received countless offers for modeling, endorsements, commercials, and much more. Everyone wanted to be part of their rising success, but the woman wasn't there for any of that. She asked to meet the girls. Julius was hesitant to let her in, but her eyes filled with kindness and sadness convinced him otherwise. Once everyone was seated in the living room, the woman introduced herself. Her name was Ariel, and she was the biological mother of the sextuplets. There was an audible gasp in the room. Ariel began to share her heartbreaking story. She explained that her parents had been poor, illiterate, and naive. They had married her off to a much older man in exchange for money. This man had desperately wanted an heir, and when Ariel became pregnant, he was ecstatic. However, complications arose due to the multiple babies she was carrying, and Ariel had to be hospitalized for weeks. Her husband had grown upset because of the medical bills. The girls had been delivered prematurely via C-section, and the hospital had celebrated their birth by waiving the fees for the extended stay in the incubators. However, Ariel's husband was furious that all 6 babies were girls. Worse, the doctors had advised Ariel not to get pregnant again for years, as her body needed time to heal. Her husband's anger turned into abuse, but Ariel endured it for the sake of her daughters. When the girls turned 3, he began drinking and became more violent. Ariel, realizing she couldn't protect them any longer, made the heartbreaking decision to take the girls to an orphanage and pass them off as orphans. It was the only way she knew they would be taken care of, as she had no means of providing for them herself. She told her daughters to stay together no matter what, promising she would one day return for them. For years, Ariel survived by doing menial jobs, eventually finding work at a small bed and breakfast. The owner, an elderly woman, took a liking to her and, when she passed away, left the business to Ariel. Through hard work and determination, Ariel transformed the bed and breakfast into an exclusive resort. With her life now in a better place, she returned to find her daughters, only to discover they had vanished without a trace. It wasn't until Ariel saw their viral performance online that she finally found them. The girls were deeply moved by their mother's story and reconnected with her. Ariel also shared that their biological father had passed away. He had gotten drunk, fallen, and tragically broken his neck. Ariel thanked Julius and Mildred for their love and care for her daughters. After hours of conversation, Ariel invited everyone, including Mildred and Julius, to spend a month-long vacation at her resort. Ariel had given birth to the sextuplets when she was 19, which meant she was now only 38. She had never remarried or entered another relationship. Julius, who was 43 and also single, found himself increasingly drawn to Ariel during their time at the resort. The girls noticed their mutual attraction and not so subtly began playing matchmaker. Eventually, Julius and Ariel gave in to their feelings and started dating. A few months later, Julius proposed and Ariel accepted. They were married, and Ariel moved in with the man of her dreams, her 6 beautiful daughters, and her caring mother-in-law. What a story. It's always heartwarming to see people go through hard times and ultimately find happiness. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We'll see you in the next video.